Before we begin today's video, I'd like to point out that the channel recently passed 100 subscribers. Congratulations everyone, 100 subscribers is the biggest number known to man. Let's see if we can keep this growth going and discover new numbers. And if you're watching this video and are not subscribed, then I hope you stick around and keep me company. Tim Sweeney locked me in a dumpster with nothing to eat but leftover Little Caesars and won't let me out until I take a sponsorship offer for the non-existent Epic Games deck. But let's get to what you all came here for. I admittedly have been falling far behind on putting out content for crap on deck. The sheer size of my existing Steam library and rate at which new games are coming out has given me exactly the choice paralysis that I feared it would when it comes to prioritizing titles. My plans right now are to make lists of games that can conceivably be beaten in a relatively short order, or at least get the gist of what might go wrong, and focus on those. Particularly, I'm looking for games that are listed as either unsupported or unknown by Valve. I'd also like to be able to play a game front to back because you never know when something might break down when played over long periods or at specific points in the game or after putting the system in sleep mode multiple times. On the subject of the Bioshock trilogy, my plan was to cover the original versions and the remasters, but then I noticed that the original Bioshock 1 and 2 aren't even sold on Steam anymore, so that might be useless information for most people. I might still try both. Bioshock is listed as unknown on Steam Deck's compatibility, although Bioshock 2 is rated as not just verified, but great on deck. It's odd that the original version isn't rated at all. But everyone wants to know the simple question: does Bioshock work on the Steam Deck? Of course it does. Otherwise the video would pretty much end here. But how well does it work? Well, let's find out together. I'd like to preface this by making a note as to why I've been putting off these videos. The Steam Deck has mostly been fine to record off of, which I've been doing via the Elgato I bought like 10 years ago. I say mostly because it just seems to break sometimes depending on various factors, or often for no reason at all. OBS will record one game just fine and then completely refuse to acknowledge another. Elgato software works great until it doesn't. Sometimes it breaks if I plug in the cable before the game launches, and sometimes I have to plug it in before launching, otherwise it won't pick up the video or audio. Occasionally I just have to reboot my laptop. There's some really weird problems that crop up.
They told you were great things. You know what? They were.
And all of this is relegated to how the recording software is picking up the feed. None of this affects the Steam Deck itself, which continues playing the games just fine. But if I can't get video recorded, I can't make a video. And I'd rather not shove my phone in my mouth and try to record the feed like I'm a 2006 Let's Player. I was trying to figure out a more reliable method of recording and ultimately had to accept that it has to be dealt with on a game-by-game basis. There is no universal patch. I also don't want to put recording software on the deck as it degrades performance, and this video series is all about compatibility, frame rate, and battery life. And I can't have external factors skewing the result. Booting up Bioshock defaults the resolution to 1280 by 800, obviously, with 4x filters and vertical sync off. I think the lack of graphic settings in this game would have Total Biscuit spinning in his grave, but Bioshock Remastered basically just has one setting: Remastered. I started a new game on normal difficulty and immediately kicked off with the campaign. The opening cutscene didn't record because of the aforementioned Elgato issue. The rest was recorded on OBS. In my Terminator video, I specifically pointed out that you shouldn't judge the Steam Deck on the visuals of a low-budget game running at low resolution, recorded and rendered at 1080p for YouTube. I should note here for the record that this recording is going to look much worse than it does on the system. Bear in mind that this is video rendered in 1280 by 800, captured in 1080p, and then put on whatever size screen you're watching it on. There's going to be some inevitable degradation in quality. The Steam Deck doesn't run games at high definition, but the smaller screen does make up for its inadequacies. See, I did say that. And hopefully the Bioshock footage goes to prove a little better that Steam Deck can play good-looking games. Now, Bioshock Remastered is obviously a 6-year-old up-res, of a 15-year-old game running on Unreal 3. But it's still a good-looking game if you ask me. It definitely looks great on the Steam Deck small screen, and even the upsized video looks good. It is a darker game, making it harder to see items tucked away in corners though. Thankfully, Bioshock runs with few problems. You don't need to force compatibility or use experimental Proton, and since the game has native controller support, it just works with the deck controls. Customizing the back paddles needs to be done at a system level, but that's a given as few games natively recognize the deck controller as a thing. Frame rate is iffy, and this might actually be a Bioshock Remastered thing. While the game stays pretty well within the 50 to 60 frame rate, I did notice some parts of the map had issues with micro-stuttering. Specifically, I think it's related to the number of enemies spawned because it cools off as you kill more people, loot stuff, and bodies disappear. It's not a regular occurrence, and it mostly happened at Neptune's Bounty. As far as battery life goes, Bioshock Remastered holds between 3.5 to 4 hours roughly of battery life if you play it from full charge or shutdown. As I said before, you really don't want to let the Steam Deck get below that 10% warning without shutting it down yourself. If you watch the Terminator video, you'll know that game had the battery running at around 25 watts consistently, and if you catch the Bioshock gameplay, you'll notice that this runs the battery at 10 to 11 watts. It goes to what I said before about Terminator being a rather unoptimized low-budget game, especially considering how much better Bioshock looks and the fact that they're both on a version of the Unreal Engine. And then the game crashed. That's fine. I only lost like 2 hours grinding out the photo intel. Who needs a Sunday afternoon anyway? Excuse me, I'm going to go have a mental breakdown. Son of a bitch! FYI, Bioshock comes from an era where autosave doesn't exist, at least not outside the start of each level. You kind of forget about it because of the respawn system, but if this game crashes, you are screwed if you haven't saved all level. And I had to go back. I had to know if that area of Neptune's Bounty was a problem on the deck. I'm sure it's highly unlikely that a specific level transition would be broken on this platform, but you never know. And it worked the second time I went through. The truth is, as far as I see it, Bioshock Remastered has a teeny problem on the deck. It crashes sometimes when transitioning between areas. Not every time, but it happened 3 times over the course of about 8 hours, and never happened twice in a row. I did notice the crashes happened specifically when the battery was below 20%, but I can neither confirm nor deny that being connected. It's just an observation. If you do pick up Remastered on the deck, save often, especially before getting into that bathysphere. I didn't beat Bioshock, but I got about 3/4 of the way through the game, and I'm fairly certain I've seen everything that might go wrong. If there was some big issue with the Steam Deck and the game, I'm sure I would have seen it by now. I think going forward, my rule might just be about 8 hours of the game, which is a little less than I played over the course of today. I'm still working on trying to keep a production schedule up. Ultimately, I have to give Bioshock a near perfect pass on deck. The battery life is great at over 3.5 hours, the game runs fluidly without any experimental Proton builds or community control patching, and the crashes are very isolated, very irregular, and very predictable as they only happened at level transitions. It's not perfect, but then again, Bioshock Remastered has its own problems on regular PCs too. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I will be dumping a full hour of gameplay sometime in the next day or so, and until then, I will see you in the next video. Thank you all for watching. Thankfully, Bioshock runs with few problems.